Today, to talk about Nphet, the National Public Health Emergency Team being disbanded in October, basically in the next month. And obviously that's good news, and obviously we straight away, as soon as they're disbanded, we need to abolish them completely, just take rid of them. Because we have to question what they did during the last 2 years. We have to question things, we have to look into things, we have to investigate things, and how much power they really did have over our politicians and over the state. Because they were kind of opposing the people that were unelected. Again, we should elect them if they have that much power, because they did have a lot of power. They were advising the government. They were probably taking decisions for the government and not getting the government's consent. Again, more or less, they were accountable to nobody. Who were they accountable to? You and me. Who were they accountable to? Because they wouldn't elect the people. At least with me, Hall Martin, he's accountable to the people of Cork and what he does. In the next election, he will be accountable for what he does in this term. But Dr. Tony Holohan and the West, they're not accountable to anybody. And these decisions the Nphet made and recommendations have affected businesses, have affected you and me, affected everybody in the country. More than others. Businesses, restaurants, people that are bankrupt at the moment, people who can't afford to even put food on the table. And again, we have to have inquiries up to work this committee. We can't have big fucking long inquiries that go on 6 or 7 years, like any tribunal. We can't have that. We need to have a formal inquiry. Them in on the day, we have to ask them some serious questions. We have to get people in that can ask them some serious questions, not OTE or any of them. We can't have them. They wouldn't ask anybody a serious question in their life. But again, we have to get people in that are very serious. We meet Matty McGuire there, ask them very, very serious questions. Dr. Tony Holohan, Luke O'Neill and the rest. We have to ask them very serious questions. On what basis? On everything that they decided to do. Because again, we all know Nphet, whatever Nphet said to the government, take for example, Nphet said jump. The government will ask how high. That's what it was. The government, the Nphet were the highest body more or less than the government. They had more power, the extreme power over the state, and everything they said was basically done, without any question from the media, without any question from politicians. At the end of the day, the Nphet was accountable to nobody. Who were they accountable to? The president of the Taoiseach, who? OT never explained that. Who questions them? Who says, right, say you want to close the cafes, the pubs. On what basis? Where evidence do you see from other countries or from Ireland? What evidence do you see? They just say, we've seen it and we think it's going to happen in X, Y and Z. But we all know, and this brings me on to the next thing, we all know there'll be some other variant and things like that. And they say for example the Connor variant or something like that, they bring it in for next week or next month or whatever, and it comes along. And Nphet to be just back in, we all know it, we all can see it happening. And we've been back to stage 1 again, but they should have been disbanded 3 to 4 months. I would even go far as December last year they should have been disbanded. Because they had no basis, because again, unless they were elected, unless they had an election in the morning, and I was like, what dot do I want to vote for to be on the Nphet, because again, we should have a say, we should really have a say. Take for example, I wanted to vote for Conor O'Brien or something like that, random name I just put on my head. Conor O'Brien, I'd be like, yeah, give him number 1, I want him on Nphet. And other people agree with me and they vote him in. And again, it has to be kind of like the presidential elections. Whoever gets the majority of the votes, will get in. And obviously these people on Nphet too getting their wages, amount of salaries. It's ridiculous, but questions do need to be asked. We can't just disband them and say, can go on home and we forget about everything that happened over the last 3 years. We have to question everything they did. Every advice they give to the government, we need to sit down and we need to look at that. Because obviously this transcripts, this letters, X, Y and Z, this documents, we need to look at all of them and say, what evidence really did Nphet have? Take for example, Dr. Tony Holohan said schools should be closed. What evidence was there to say to suppose subsidise that and suppose make it clear that it was a danger to public health, it was a clear danger to the people? We need to look at it, because again, Nphet were accountable to nobody, and again, we all see it in history. And again, some of them in Nphet could be good people, and I'll be honest here, but there might be 1 or 2 that might be just high in power. And we need to look at that, we do need to look at it. Because there was injustices done during the lockdown, and there was hard measures put in place that shouldn't have been put in place. And at the end of the day, when the same old boat, lockdowns didn't work, when the same old boat, there's still cases, there's still X, Y and Z, as they say, variants, and from here down everywhere. And nothing really has changed. Let's be totally honest. Nothing has really changed. And we have to be totally frank with that, saying 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And where Leo got his big death numbers from the virus, like he said 100,000 or something like that at the beginning of the year, and I took him serious. But again, we need to look at this, what the politicians are saying to us too. We need to look at everything. We need to have a huge investigation, but obviously not a one that goes on 6 or 7 years and has nobody to accountable and basically just says fuck all about it and tells us what we already know. But again, it's good news. If the Nphet is disbanded in October, I'd be happy enough. I'd be like, fair, about time. And I'd be saying in the next morning after the disbanded, we need to investigate them. We need to get every independent people from other countries to investigate them. We need to get as many documents off them as humanly possible before they have the opportunity to destroy them or anything like that. We need to find out on what basis did they close half of the country down, on what basis did they destroy people's freedoms and people's lives, on what basis, again what basis, on what advice from themselves, and what advice from experts, and what X, Y and Z. Because in some instances they were too high on power, we have to be totally honest, and we have to say it straight. Some things they brought in place were absolutely fucking ridiculous. Like, let's be frank, some things made sense, some things did make sense, but majority of things made fucking nothing, no sense whatsoever. Like keeping the airports open and things like that, if you're going to stop a virus from coming into the country, that's generally the first thing you would do, stop people from coming in on the ports and the airports, and not flying in people from Romania to pick apples and berries or whatever the fuck they were picking up in Dublin. But again, we have to ask questions. We do really have to ask questions. We can't sit here and wait for RT to ask questions, because RT won't ask questions. RT just say they were doing a great job and let them go home in peace now with a lot of pensions. Again, that's not going to how it work. We're going to have to look into it, and we have to say, because again, in the emergency circumstances, nobody asked any questions. Just go with the flow and see what happens. When things are done, when after everything's happened, as even me home Martin said today, it's after the emergency circumstances. We need to look into everything. We can't just let them go home and say it's forgotten about. Oh, it's forgiven. People are dead from, hundreds of thousands of people are dead. Many suicides have happened. We're going to forget about it. And because again, we have to see the basis. We have to see the basis on why they close things, why they destroy people's lives, why they destroy people's freedoms, on what basis, and why are we still in the same boat. And what about the PCO test, for example? Michael McNamara said in Darla, because they do have interest in the PCO test. There's a big company that have interest in the Irish government and TDs, and they have an interest in it. And we do have to look into it. But yeah, I'm happy to see Nphet being disbanded. But again, will they be disbanded? Will they really? That's the question we need to ask ourselves. Because I believe it when I see it. If they come out tomorrow and they say, Tony Holohan's going home and he's never coming back, or Luke O'Neill's going home. I don't know where Luke O'Neill came into this picture. I don't even think he's on Nphet. I don't know where news talk has him on every 10 seconds of the day, and he's from Trinity College and he's lab at Trinity College. And I don't know where did Luke come out of? Where did Luke become a national expert in diseases? Like, please explain, Luke. I understand Tony Holohan, maybe the deputy chief medical officer, understand they have experience. But where did Luke O'Neill come from? And Luke O'Neill became the poster boy for the Irish government in one stage. But yeah, questions need to be asked. Thank you.